everybody. We're here to do a little bit of a recap of our Sunday school lesson that we're teaching at church to prepare everybody for Christmas and talk about the preparation of the coming of the Messiah. So that's our topic for today, and I'm being joined by my lovely wife Karen, who is here with me. And we're just going to go back through some of the material in case you wanted to review something that we talked about in the class, or if you're joining us online, you're more than welcome to join us. Okay, so as I said, our topic is preparing for the coming of the Messiah. We're going to be looking at a couple of things to put us in the mood, get us ready for Christmas, which is coming very soon. And we're going to do that by looking at a very important topic. Karen, do you want to read the topic for us there?
Why were the Jewish people looking for a Messiah? Why did they think a Messiah would come?
Right. Why did they even have this idea in their heads? Why were they thinking about that? Okay. So, what do you think, Karen? Why were they looking for a Messiah to come?
Maybe there was a prophecy about that.
Well, you are absolutely right. There are a lot of prophecies that talk about the coming of the Messiah. So here we just have, a small section of one list giving more than 300 prophecies of the coming of the Messiah and what the Messiah would do and what he would accomplish. So there are a lot of these that were in the Old Testament that people were thinking about in the time of Jesus, that they were in their hearts looking forward to God doing these different things, these different prophecies. So that's what we're going to talk about today, although of course we don't have time to look at all of them. We're just going to look at a couple of these prophecies, and that way we're going to have a better understanding of what was in people's hearts and minds when Jesus came. So there you can see some of the list of them, but that's, as I said, only a partial list. Okay, well, let's continue with the very first prophecy, the first messianic prophecy in the Bible. Karen, would you like to read that one for us?
And I will put hatred between you, the serpent, and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He will bruise you on your head, and you will bruise him on his heel.
Okay, so we got a question here. Is the word seed singular or plural in this verse?
Singular, only one.
Only one, right? If it was plural, it would have an S. It would say seeds, right? And it's the same thing in Hebrew. It's singular, it's not plural. Okay, so here's another question. Would you read that question?
Who is the he that will bruise the serpent on his head?
Okay, so we're looking at this verse, and it says, talking about the seed, and then it says he. So who is the he here?
The seed.
The seed. And who do you think that might be?
Jesus.
Right, Jesus, or, originally people would have thought Messiah, because they didn't really know what name he would have until he was born, right? So there's he. Okay, good. So let's continue by talking about Daniel. So we're going to be looking at a couple of the prophecies of Daniel to get in the mood of preparation of the coming of the Messiah. Of course, as I said, there's 300 prophecies that we could look at, but we're just going to look at a couple of them, and from Daniel. And the first one we're going to look at is the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. Now, you might remember the Jewish people were taken into exile, and this was done by King Nebuchadnezzar. And Daniel was one of those taken into exile. He became a wise man, an advisor to the king. And it was this same king, King Nebuchadnezzar, who had a dream one night. He was very troubled, and he wanted to know the answer to the dream. So he asked the wise men to come up with the answer. What was this dream about? And of course, he also required them to tell him what the dream was. He wasn't going to tell them the dream. Can you imagine having to figure out the meaning of a dream that nobody tells you what that dream is? Well, that's what happened. He said that you're going to tell me what the dream is and its meaning, and if you don't, I'm going to kill you. So Daniel said, well, hold on, let me pray about it. He prayed about it, and then God revealed to him what the dream was about. And it was a dream of a statue, a figure of a man. And let's read that a little bit. Karen, you want to read Daniel chapter 2?
This image, its head was of fine gold, its chest and arms were of silver, its belly and its loins were of bronze, its legs were of iron, its feet were out of iron and out of clay.
Okay, good. So how many parts does the statue have?
4 parts.
4 parts. What are the 4 parts?
The head, the gold head,
Right. Okay, number 1.
and the silver chest and arms,
Number 2.
the bronze belly and loins,
Okay, that's number 3.
and iron legs
And feet, right?
and feet.
Legs and feet. Okay. And it's mixed out of iron and clay. Okay, so there's definitely 4 parts there.
You are the head of gold, and after you there will arise another kingdom inferior to you, then another third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth. Then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron.
Okay, so this is telling us a little bit more about these 4 parts, what the meaning of it is. So there has something to do with kingdoms, right? So there's our question. Karen, you want to read the question?
Who is the head of gold?
Right, who's the head of gold in this?
Well, it says you are, so it must be Nebuchadnezzar.
You. So yeah, this is Daniel speaking, and he's speaking to Nebuchadnezzar. He says, you are the head of gold. Okay, good. So that gives us a little hint as to what's going on. But there's one more part of the vision that we want to read about here, beginning in verse 34. What is that, Karen?
You continued looking until a stone was cut out without hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth.
Okay, good. And the question is, what part of the statue does the stone crush?
The feet of iron and clay.
The feet of iron and clay, right? So it's attacking the 4th section of the statue, okay? So let's continue reading.
In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed. And that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever.
Okay, so this is the interpretation of the rock that strikes the statue on the feet, right? So it's talking about that rock. Okay, so what is this kingdom that will never be destroyed? What do you think that's a prophecy of?
It must be when Jesus comes.
Right, a prophecy of when Jesus or Messiah comes. You know, that's how people would have looked at it, the coming of the Messiah. Okay, good. So here's what we've got so far. We've got the head of gold, and we've identified that with Nebuchadnezzar, with his Babylonian kingdom. We've got the chest of silver. Now we know that's going to be a second kingdom. The thighs of bronze, that's going to be a third kingdom. And the legs of iron, that's going to be a fourth kingdom. And at the time of that fourth kingdom is going to appear this crushing stone, which is a symbol of an eternal kingdom, a messianic kingdom that is coming. Okay, well, we need more information, so we're going to go to a dream that Daniel had. The earlier one was one that Nebuchadnezzar had, but this is one that Daniel had himself while he was there in the city of Babylon. And let's start reading there in Daniel chapter 7. Karen, would you read for us?
And 4 great animals were coming up from the sea, each different from the other.
Okay, how many animals?
4.
Okay, that's easy, right? And go ahead and read the verse.
These great animals, which are 4 in number, are 4 kings who will arise from the earth.
Okay, does that sound familiar? Anything familiar about that?
Yes.
What is that?
There's 4.
4, and they're 4 kings, right? So
and 4 kings.
Here again, we have 4 kings in sequence, just like we had in the previous vision, right? So we've pretty well established that the first one, which is the same as the head of the statue, which is the lion, that's Babylon. Now the next one is the bear, and if we were to jump ahead to Daniel 8, but just to save time, I'll just let you know the answer. You can look it up yourself. There's another beast, and that's going to be Persia. Daniel actually tells us it's going to be the Medes and the Persians. And then the third one is going to be Greece, because there in Daniel chapter 8, he tells us that this is going to be the kingdom of the Greeks. And then a fourth one, which is not identified for us, at least not yet. And then what does he say is going to happen in the time of that fourth beast? Here's the verse. Would you read it?
I was seeing in visions of the night, and look, with the clouds of the heavens, one like a son of man was coming. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him.
Okay, good. So, who is the Ancient of Days? We got a little hint there. He's seated on a throne in Daniel chapter 7, verse 9. So, who do you think that might be, the Ancient of Days?
Father God.
Father God, right. This is what Christians would call the Father God, part of the Trinity of God. So this is the Father, okay? And then let's continue reading verse 14.
And to him, the Son of Man, was given dominion and honor and a kingdom, and all the peoples, the nations, and the language groups will worship him. His dominion will be an eternal dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom one that will not be destroyed.
Okay, so here's the Ancient of Days, God the Father, and this other person, the Son of Man, is presented to him, and he's given honor, he's given a kingdom, and all these things. So who do you think this Son of Man is?
Messiah.
Messiah, right? It's a picture of the Messiah. And this was generally understood to be a prophecy of the Messiah before Jesus was born, even, okay? So let's put it all together now. So using those two different dreams or visions, we've got the lion is Babylon, the bear is Persia, the leopard is Greece, and the beast would be the next one, which in Jesus' day, they already knew it was Rome because they were living under the Romans. So what did that mean? Well, if the fourth kingdom has come, that means it's time for that eternal kingdom to be started, the Son of Man kingdom. Okay, so let's look at this slide, which will give us a little bit more information, help us understand. If you look at the top, you see the four beasts. They're going in order from left to right, so the time is flowing from left to right. And down at the bottom, you can see the four kingdoms that they are associated with. So over on the left is Babylon, and then next is Persia, then comes Greece, and then comes Rome. You've got some dates there if you're interested in the dates. But let's tie this in with the Bible. So all the way over on the left, the Babylonians and the Persians, their rule was during the latter part of the Old Testament. And then during the Persian kingdom, that's the end of the documents that we have that are put in the Old Testament, and we come to the time between the Testaments. And this is when the kingdom of Greece was ruling. So we have no direct biblical books written in that time. However, that time period is covered a little bit in prophecy, but no books written during that time itself. And then over on the right, during the Romans, that's when we come to the time of the New Testament, okay? So that's just to help you keep in your mind about these different kingdoms that were to come. So let's have a quiz. Let's see if you remember what those empires were, okay? So Karen, I'm going to give you the quiz.
All right.
What is the first empire?
Babylon.
Babylon is correct. Okay, what's the second empire?
Persia.
Persia is correct. The Medes and the Persians, if you want the full name. Okay, what about the third empire?
Greece.
Is Greece. Okay, that's correct. And the fourth empire?
Rome.
Rome, right. And then?
Jesus comes back. Messianic kingdom.
Well, it would not be coming back. It would be establishing his messianic kingdom, and that would happen during the Roman rule, okay? So let's see if we can fix these different periods of time more clearly in our brains, because sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the details. So what can we think about the first kingdom, the Babylonian Empire, to help us remember it better? Well, this is when the exile took place under King Nebuchadnezzar. He went down, he conquered Jerusalem, and he took all the people from that area into exile. So this is what's called the Babylonian exile. So that happened during the time of the Babylonian Empire. And two people that we can think of that came from this time period are Daniel, the prophet Daniel, and the prophet Ezekiel. And I'm sure that you know their names. Each of them has a book in the Bible. But both of them were part of the exiles. They were among the exiles that were taken north into the northern territories of the Babylonian Empire, and they both ended up being prophets. So these are two people that we can think of when we think of the Babylonian Empire. Okay, let's go on to number 2, the Persian Empire. What can we think of to help us remember that empire? Well, this is the empire when Esther, Queen Esther, the book of Esther, when she became the queen of one of the Persian emperors. And the very first of these Persian emperors was Cyrus. And he's so important because he's the one who made the decision to let the Jewish people return from exile. And so they were able to go back to their home. Now, not everybody went back. Actually, a minority of Jewish people went back, but it was a fairly sizable group that went back and began life again in what we'd call the Promised Land, the Holy Land, Israel, as we know it today. So this we can associate with the Persian Empire. Okay, let's go to empire number 3. That's the Greek Empire. What can we think of to associate with this empire? Well, this was all started by Alexander the Great. You've probably heard his name before. One of the most famous conquerors of all of history. So Alexander is the one who left Greece, Macedonia actually, and expanded his empire east all the way to India. And this he did it very quickly, and that may be why his empire is represented by a leopard, which can run very quickly. He was able to expand his empire very quickly. Okay, well, let's find out a little bit more about this Greek Empire. Karen, you want to read part of that Daniel 7 prophecy that gives us some more information?
After this I kept looking, and behold, another one like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it.
Okay, so it's talking about the leopard, and it says something very curious about it. It had 4 heads. So our question is, why does the beast have 4 heads?
4 heads of government?
Well, that's right. His kingdom, Alexander's kingdom, when he died, was divided into 4 parts, into several parts, but ended up being mostly 4 parts. And these are represented by the 4 heads, the 4 heads of the leopard. Okay, good. So let's continue reading a little bit more about this time period in Daniel 11. So this is another prophecy, but it also relates to this time period. So go ahead, Karen.
In his place, a despicable person will arise, on whom the honor of kingship has not been conferred, but he will come in a time of tranquility and seize the kingdom by intrigue.
So who's this going to be? Who's this evil person? Well, as it turned out, this was Antiochus Epiphanes. I don't know if you've ever heard of him before, but he was ruling one of these sections of Alexander's kingdom, the Seleucids, in the Seleucid Empire. And so he became the ruler of that. And he was a very enthusiastic guy in terms of being enthusiastic for his beliefs and for his Greek beliefs, both philosophical beliefs, religious beliefs, the cultural beliefs. And he tried to spread them all over his kingdom. And when he did this spreading of these ideas, both him and other people, that we call this Hellenization. So they were spreading ideas about Greek exercise and sports, about Greek culture, about Greek religion. So this is all something that they were doing, okay? And one of the groups of people that was influenced by this is the Sadducees. So let's read about the Sadducees in Acts chapter 23.
For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor an angel, nor a spirit.
Okay, so do those teachings agree? Do those opinions agree with Christian teaching, Karen?
No.
No, not at all, right? Because obviously Christianity believes in a resurrection. Christianity believes in angels. Also spirit, which seems to refer to the idea that our spirits continue to exist after our death. Well, why didn't the Sadducees believe in this? Because they had been influenced by Greek thinking, right? So they were what we would call today secularized, right? In those days we'd call it Hellenized. They started to think like the pagan majority around them. And this affected even their religious beliefs. So we can see some evidence of it here. On the left you see a synagogue floor which has the signs of the zodiac. Well, what are the signs of the zodiac doing on a synagogue floor? It's because the population, their ideas had been mixed together with Greek ideas. You can even see there in the circle at the center, at the top of it, you can see there's a figure with his hand raised holding a globe, and this is a figure of Helios. This is a pagan god on a synagogue floor. Why is that there? Well, some people said, by this time they were just looking at it as decoration. But, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it says that the Jewish people are not supposed to make any images of gods. And they got one here in a synagogue. Well, how could that be? It's because of their mixing their religious ideas, their own mixed together with the Greek ideas, with the Hellenistic ideas. So this is the mixing of religions. And Josephus, a Jewish historian who lived in the time of the apostles, he even tells us about the belief amongst at least the priests there, because he's of priestly descent, that the 12 stones in the breastplate of the high priest, you can see it up there in the corner, that they were representing the 12 signs of the zodiac. Does the Bible say anything about that? No, the Bible doesn't say anything about that. So this is just another example of syncretism, the mixing of religions. So here's another example. Josephus also tells us that the lampstand in the temple, which has 7 branches, as you can see in the full-scale reconstruction there on the left, that this represented the 7 planets. At that time they knew of 7 planets. So here again, it's a mixing of Greek paganistic ideas together with Jewish religious ideas. A pretty dangerous situation, actually, to do that. And because it ended up being practically a civil war in Israel with the people who loved these new Greek ideas and wanted everybody to think that way, and the others have said, no, wait a minute, we're not going to go along with this new religion and these new ideas. We want to continue according to the traditions of our people and our God. So there ended up being practically a civil war, and it actually turned into a war when Antiochus sent a general who showed up and invaded Jerusalem and killed a lot of people and took over the Jewish temple, and they converted it to worship of pagan gods. So they have all kinds of now idols in the Jewish temple. They're doing pagan ritual in there, pagan worship, and of course this was devastating for the people who wanted to continue to worship God according to the Bible. Well, he was so enthusiastic about this that Antiochus sent soldiers into all the villages in Judea, and they were to go from place to place and to get the people to worship the false gods. So that's what they did. They went into different villages, and they would find usually the head man, whoever's the most respected man in the village, and they figured if they can get him to worship the false gods, then the people will follow along. Well, they came to a village called Modi'in, which is down near the airport, in the modern airport in Jerusalem. Of course, they didn't have an airport at that time. Here they found the head man of the village, Mattathias. And they said to him, Mattathias, we want you to make a sacrifice to pagan gods. And Mattathias said, no way, I'm not going to do that. So they put a lot of pressure on the people to get somebody to worship the false gods. So here's just a couple of quick pictures of Modi'in. They're finding the remnants of the city and the little villages around it. And finally, one of the Jewish people decided, okay, I'll go ahead and I'll offer the sacrifice. So when he went up to prepare to offer the sacrifice, Mattathias was going to have none of it. And he pulled out a sword from underneath his robe, and he went up there and he killed the Jew that was offering the sacrifice. Well, immediately his sons, 7 strong sons, pulled out swords from their robes, and they attacked and killed the Greek soldiers that were there. And so now they're in big trouble with the Greek government. So what are they going to do? Well, they had to run into the hills, doing exactly what David did when he escaped from Saul centuries earlier. They went out into those same hills and hid out there. And as they packed up and were going out of the town, Mattathias, according to one of the records we have, the first book of Maccabees, he said, whoever is zealous for the law of our God and keeps the covenant, let him follow me. In other words, if you're one of the ones who believes that we should continue to worship God according to the law of God, we should do that. Okay, you should follow me. So what law is he talking about, Karen?
It must be the law that Moses got from God.
Right, the law of Moses. So if you want to obey the law of Moses, continue in our traditional way of life, then come on, follow me. And they went out into the mountains. And here they hid out from the Greeks, because of course the soldiers went to find out what had happened. They're going to punish them. And a lot of other people joined them, hiding out in the woods. And eventually it came to war, and the Jews were fighting against the Greeks. And the amazing thing is that in battle after battle, they won. Even against some of their biggest armies, which you can see here on the right, represented with a bunch of, what is that? Elephants. Can you imagine? They actually did have elephants fighting for them in their armies. Those were the tanks, the military tanks of those days. But the Jews were clever. They found a way to deal with it. One of the sons of Mattathias, he ran up underneath one of the elephants and thrust up with his sword and killed the elephant. So they found a way to deal with this threat. And so they had miracle after miracle in terms of defeating much larger, more powerful armies. They didn't win everything, but they won an awful lot. And they ended up reconquering Jerusalem. So they had Jerusalem under their control. And so immediately what they did was to cleanse the temple from all those statues and pagan things and rededicate it to the worship of God. And so this was an 8-day process. They called it the dedication of the altar, the dedication of the temple. And so they had this long ceremony. And one of the miracle stories that comes out, it's a little bit later, so we're not sure if it's totally authentic, but there was apparently not enough oil for the oil lamp, the menorah, in the temple to burn for all the days of the dedication, but miraculously that oil stretched out to last for the whole time. And that's why you see these 8-branched lampstands, Hanukkahs, used in the celebration of Hanukkah up until this day. Okay, 8 branches plus a 9th for the servant, the one that lights the other one, so 9-branch lampstand. Well, many years later, this was a couple of generations before Jesus, he would also celebrate Hanukkah, and it's mentioned in the Gospel of John. Karen, you want to read that for us?
At that time, the dedication, Hanukkah, took place in Jerusalem. It was the rainy season, and Jesus was walking about in the temple, in the portico of Solomon.
Right, so that dedication, that's referring to Hanukkah. Hanukkah just means dedication. So he was there in town. He came into Jerusalem for Hanukkah, to celebrate it. Okay, so what's our question here? Why would Jesus celebrate Hanukkah? Why do you think, Karen, Jesus would celebrate Hanukkah?
Because Jesus was a Jew.
Right, he was Jewish. And also he agreed with the basic viewpoint of why that had happened, because the Jewish people were defending their identity, they're defending their religion, and of course if they hadn't done that, Jesus couldn't have done his work as Messiah, because there wouldn't be any more Jewish people as we know them today. They would have been assimilated into the Greek culture, like some of the other surrounding cultures were. So Hanukkah is actually very important for there to even be a ministry of Jesus. And so really it should be important to Christians as well as Jewish people, because, Jesus himself celebrated it. And because of the victories, that's why there was still a Jewish people and why he was able to do his ministry. Okay, good. Well, anyway, to get back to the Hasmoneans, their kingdom didn't last all that long. It was just pretty much a blip, of just more than 100 years on the radar. And then we come to, of course, kingdom number 4, and that was the Romans. And so when the Romans showed up, of course, now everybody knows what that 4th kingdom is going to be. It's going to be the Romans. Well, if that 4th kingdom is here, what does that mean? That also means the Messiah is going to show up. So people knew this, and they had this expectation in their heart. And in fact, it's recorded for us in the book of Luke, in Luke chapter 2, a couple of verses which give us some insight into what was in the heart of the people just at the time that Jesus was born. So, Karen, you want to read Luke 2:38 for us?
All those looking for the redemption of Jerusalem.
So these are all the people looking for God to do something to redeem Jerusalem, to set it free from these Roman soldiers that were everywhere telling them what to do. And there's another little hint in verse 25. Would you read that?
He was looking for the consolation of Israel.
All right, so this is talking about another person who's looking for God to do something, to console Israel, to solve all the problems that they were having. And so this is the attitude of the people based on prophecy when Jesus was born. Okay, so that prepares us for next time to be ready for hearing some of the details of what was going on in those years immediately before Jesus was born that we're going to study in Luke chapter 1 and chapter 2. So I hope that you'll be able to join us for that, and you'll be able to go through those verses with us with the understanding of the people's expectation that we just learned about by looking at only a couple of the many prophecies that people were reading in the synagogues and wherever they had an opportunity to learn or memorize scripture, that were giving them an expectation and a hope in their heart that God was going to do something. So please join us when we continue our studies looking at Luke chapter 1 and 2. See you next time.